areas. Uh, it has a publication. It publishes a magazine called World Education Review. It also publishes many other reports, on education. It aims to build 100 chapters in different cities by 2022. It will soon open its membership for institutions, individuals. It also impart training for leaders, teachers, students, and parents. As I shared in the beginning, that so far we have organized 42 sessions. This is 43rd. And in these 42 sessions, we have received 4,600 plus registrations. We have received 4,100 plus questions from different stakeholders, teachers, school leaders. Uh, we have seen the participation from 5 countries: India, USA, Qatar, UAE, Nepal. We have seen participation from 19 states and 74 cities across India. We aim to organize 200 sessions, by the end of February or mid March. We would be reaching out to 100,000 plus educators through these sessions, and 20,000 plus institutions, and 1,000 plus eminent speakers like today's speakers would be joining us to share their perspective. Now, I would request, please join me in welcoming today's speakers. Our first key speaker for the day, Shri Bhanu Pratap Pantji. Bhanu sir needs no introduction. He is the founder principal of Delhi World Public School, Ajmer, Rajasthan. Bhanu sir is belongs to a third generation of a family of illustrious teachers from Mayo College, Ajmer. He brings with him a commendable and illustrious career spanning 28 years. He has served as principal for over 14 years across various residential and day schools, including Hilltop School, Dalhousie, Presidency School, Ajmer, Raffles International School, Alwar, LPS Global School, Noida. He is the proud recipient of prestigious Sarla Chopra National Award for contribution to the field of education. He was also awarded with the Eminent Education Award by National and International Compendium NIC for the year 2009. He's an avid sports person. He continues to enjoy almost all sports and still maintains a very high standard of fitness. He is a widely traveled man. He has visited and seen the working of many best schools in UK and across the country. We are very honored with your presence, Bhanu sir. Thank you for joining.
Thank you so much, Rajul.
Our next key speaker for the day, Dr. V. Samuel Raj. Dr. V. Samuel Raj is the Director and Dean Academics with SRM University, Haryana. Dr. Raj is the distinguished academician as the Professor of Microbiology and Biotechnology and Director of Center for Drug Design, Discovery and Development. He joined SRM University, Haryana with 10 years R&D experience, with two major pharma giants, Ranbaxy and Daiichi Sankyo, and 15 years international and national research experience. He has done PhD microbiology from the Institute of Medical Sciences, Banaras Hindu University in 1993. He has won many awards and fellowships in US, Japan, Switzerland, UK, Taiwan, and India, including the prestigious Tokyo Biochemical Research Foundation Award and Commonwealth Fellowship. He was recognized as the distinguished alumni of microbiology in 50 years and invited to deliver a distinguished lecture series during the Golden Jubilee celebration of Institute of Medical Sciences, BHU Varanasi. He is a proud recipient of Karamveer Chakra and Rex Global Fellowship in 2012 as a recognition of his contribution in the field of medical sciences. Thank you, Dr. Raj, for joining. We are honored with your presence. Welcome, sir. Our next key speaker for the day, Uma Dwivedi ma'am. Uma Dwivedi ji is the principal with SKR Public School, Indrapuri, Delhi. She is a distinguished academician with decades of experience. She has been recognized and awarded for her contribution to the field of education. Thank you, Uma ma'am, for joining. We are honored with your presence. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Our next key speaker for the day, Mr. Sachin Garg. He's the co-founder and vice chairman of Wisdom Valley Global School, Palwal, Haryana. Mr. Sachin Garg is an educationist, young entrepreneur with a strategic planning to implement experiential learning. He's an eminent professional known for his dedication to education and research. He has 15 plus years of experience in corporate with organizations like Infosys, SBI, OMAX. He has been recognized and awarded many times for his contribution to the field of education. Our next key speaker for the day would be Mr. Luke Mesato. Luke is the head of quality with Fatado School of Music. Fatado School of Music is India's largest music educator. It is a brand which is synonym to music education in India. It has a 150-year-old rich legacy. This Potato is working with 200 plus leading schools of India. It has trained over 1 lakh plus students across country. It has titles like Bandit, which is India's largest school level music competition to promote music talents across all schools. Other titles like Piano Concert, Cadence Workshop, High Jump Training, FSM Exams, Incentive Recital, FSM Recital. It has partnerships with renowned institutions like Berklee College of Music and NMIMS School of Performing Arts. So we are very honored with your presence, Luke. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Raj.
Now, time to formally begin the session. With the opening remarks from our speakers. We have already shared the flow for the session with all of you, and we'll start with the opening remark. I would request all the speakers to limit their opening remark for 1 minute, and then we'll come back to you for your main talk. That would be for 8 to 10 minutes, and then we have received many questions. So we would be presenting those questions to all of you for your comments and perspective. Right. So I would request Bhanu sir, if we can have your opening remark.
Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you very much, Rajul, for this wonderful kind of favor that you have invited me to be here today and share my views. Well, National Education Policy 2020 do come with a lot of hopes and a lot of wonderful sort of a feeling. But then today in my small presentation, I would try to cover that what is the meaning of education policy when we say there had been only 3 education policies since independence. What is the difference between education policy and educational reforms, which we keep seeing time and again? And definitely being very positive, because that is what we have been taught about, that when we talk about education, which basically literally means the all-round development of the child, of a person. I would like to take around 3 minutes with my presentation in the end to say that how technology will become an enabler to suffice the objectives which the National Education Policy is putting up to us. So I'm really happy and thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. We are very excited to hear your perspective on these points. Thank you. Now I would request Uma ma'am, if we can have your opening remark.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, I would like to thank Rizul to give me the opportunity to come on this platform and share my views. As a head of the institution, I am also aware about this policy, like what are the things which we are going to face the problem and how this policy is going to change the scenario of the education and towards which we are moving in the 21st century. So I would like to share the views regarding how this change will bring in the school and how it will affect the students of the schools. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, ma'am. This is again a very important, I would say, topic, and many people have raised their hope that this policy has potential to change the shape of Indian education. Right now, I would request Dr. Samuel Raj sir, if you can have your opening remark.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for your kind invitation. I am so thrilled to be part of this distinguished panel. Our respected principals are here, and the organizers are also having so much of experience in the field of education. I am here to learn as well as to share my thoughts. Where we can do the synergy, where we can get the synergy. Because when we join together, 1 plus 1, we know that it's energy too. But synergy is 1 plus 1 is equal to more, or more than 3. So that is going to be the synergy. With the new education policy, we expect the synergy, and how the synergy will be achieved. This is what going to be the very big expectation. Okay, schools should not be just remain as a school, and higher education should not be just separate as higher education. There is a need for synergy. How we can work together, how we can collaborate with the schools, and then we can bring them together. And they can learn from us, and then we will be very happy to learn from the schools. So when we work together, there will be a synergy, and then we will see that there is a positive impact on the new education policy. So this is what I will be just slightly focusing, and where we need to focus and where we need to learn and where we need to be slightly careful. So these are the few points I will be happy to discuss with you all, and I'm so glad to learn from you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Raj. And again, this is again very important area. How we can create more synergy between school education and higher education. Right, this again very important. We are very excited for your thoughts on this. Now, I would request Sachin ji, if we can have your opening remarks, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon, Rajul, and the distinguished guest over here. I am just very pleased and thankful to you that you have given me such a lovely platform where I can just experience and share my experience with all of you. I am just a child in front of all other distinguished guests. I am just very young to them. I am here to learn the things from all of you, and having just 4 years of experience of running a school, and before that I am just having the experience in corporate. So I will try to mix up the things and what I've learned from the corporates and what I've brought to the school so that I just tried my best to implement the experiential learning through our teachers. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Sachin ji. And your this mixed experience makes you a rare asset in among the education leaders. So we are again very excited to hear your views, sir. Now, I would request Luke if we can have your opening remark.
Yes, thank you, Rajulji, and it is so awesome to see all of you all over here. I have seen, I've met a couple of distinguished speakers already over here, and as Sachin sir just now said, he's quite inexperienced. Who am I? And it's really an honor to be among people, sharing the same panel among all of you over here. So my main focus on speaking today would be mostly towards the vocation side of the new education policy, which has to do with music and the creative arts. So I have a presentation which I will make the use of later on, and to put my point across. Thank you so much.
Right. Thank you, Luke. Right. So now we are moving towards the third part of the session, which is the main talk. I would request all the speakers in the same sequence for the main talk. I would again request all the speakers to limit their talk for 8 to 10 minutes so that we have sufficient time for the questions. Right. So many people believe that the education is a medium which is not there to shape these students, to fold these students. It is a medium which is there to unfold the potential of students. And I'm sure the kind of speakers we have, the kind of learnings we are going to have through this session. And I would like to share one more thing, like eventually we would be compiling all the thoughts and perspective into a document, and we would be sharing the document with the Ministry of Education, CBSE, other state boards of country, and other state ministries of education, in different states. Right. So now I would request Bhanu sir, if we can have your main talk. Bhanu sir.
Sure. Well, as before we go into the deeper aspects of national education policy, let us start, from the very beginning, when India got independent in the year 1947. And what was the state of affairs then, when Lord Macaulay's policy was prevalent? So during this time of independence, the literacy in India was only 12%. 12% of the people in India were literate. We are not talking about educated people. We are not talking about people with liberated mind and free thinking. Those who could read or write, and especially the medium of instruction then was more in English. 12% of India was literate. And it took us a very long time to frame our first educational policy. It was drafted and it was implemented during Madam Indira Gandhi's time, the Prime Minister Indira Gandhi's time. And it was in the year 1968 when I was not born. So to frame the curriculum and to implement it, it takes a lot of resources, especially when it comes to a country of the size of India, which is so diverse. Diversity is visible not only in the form of languages, but in the form of culture, in the form of religion, in the form of people, the way they think. And the progress India has done during this time was that our literacy from 12% has touched 34%. That means 2/3 of the country was still illiterate in the year 1968 when this policy was implemented. And it went on pretty well because we never had much chance to go down. We had to actually progress, we had to go up. And then we continued with this for 18 more years. And it was in the year 1986 when I had touched my class 12th that the second education policy in India was implemented. It was launched, it was introduced by then Prime Minister, Mr. Rajiv Gandhi, which also came up with a lot of promise because then it had not given much of substance, much of thought about to the early childhood care. It was a 10+2 system of education. So this was the second education policy, and we were waiting for a new education policy to be drafted in this very challenging nation called India. We have to understand this. But then by the time this policy was drafted and implemented, the literacy in India, if you see in the year 1991, had touched 52%. That means the cup was 50% empty and 50% full. Almost 50% of the Indians were still illiterate. 50% of the Indians were still not knowing how to read a single sentence, forget about numeracy, forget about lateral thinking, forget about critical thinking, forget about high order thinking skills, forget about problem solving. They were not knowing how to communicate with each other in the stipulated then 18 languages which were given in the Constitution. They were absolutely illiterate. And we are continuing with that. So to implement, which of course the national policy has come up in the year 2020, to put it up with a new thought, with a new absolutely mindset, with the hope that here, when you will see the census of 2021, 78% of Indians are literate and still 22% of Indians are illiterate. Of course, 2011 said 74, but there is a very little progress which India has made during this time. And of this 22%, when we take 1,380 million people in India, it almost makes the entire population of America, which still belong to the illiterate population. So when we talk about the challenges which are ahead, when we will be implementing this policy, of course, in the UGC, in the higher education, it would be implemented from next year, from 2021. But the schools basically mandatory will have to make it and from the year 2022-23. So how do we have to go about? There is a lot of food for thought which should be there in the mind. Because India is basically a country of complete, absolute, paradoxical, wonderful amazement. Well, I know I have not much time and I wanted to show the technological part, but I will just very quickly take the 4 stages of national education policy, what it is talking about, and we will understand it better. The first stage, they say, in a country where now we have 22 official languages, 4 major language groups when we talk about Dravidian, when we talk about Indo-Aryan, when we talk about Sino-Tibetan, and when we talk about Participles languages. So all these wonderful places, wonderful people, wonderful, you can say, regionalities. When we talk about this age group of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 has been put up at the foundation stage. This is the foundation. The reason why very large number of children are leaving education, why basically they're not even reaching up to the middle stage or the secondary stage, why we have very less number of enrollment in the colleges, is education is not becoming a pleasurable experience for us. So at the foundation stage, that is from the pre-primary level, which was for the first time they are talking about structured curriculum there. And it is very little time that we have to have a structured curriculum pan-India everywhere. So this education policy promises to make learning a happy experience for the child, where not only numeracy and language, and communication is going to become a key feature. But the child should learn in their mother tongue. We understand better when we speak our own language. So it is emphasizing on, but there is no threat to English, and there is no threat to any regional language, and there is no threat to any foreign language. That is the beauty of this national education policy on paper. We go further, and then they talk about the preparatory stage. And we have people who are here expert in experiential learning. So very strongly, national education policy renounces, condemns rote learning. Rote learning is basically a type of learning which is without understanding. Let's forget about its application and developing those skills, as we have a wonderful person from the music school who would be talking about vocational learning, which of course will be coming to the next stage. So here basically experiential learning, child-centric learning, making a child a thinking child, emphasizing on their critical thinking. This is a stage where completely stress-free education is promised to be delivered. And again, as the child is coming, so there will be not much of pressure of even language, which we really boast about, that English medium schools are better than the regional medium schools. Because in France, they do not talk about English medium. In Germany, they do not talk about English medium. In Spain, they do not talk about English medium. And even in countries which are supposed to be leaders in education, we are talking about the Scandinavian countries, we are talking about Norway, we are talking about Sweden, we are talking about Finland. Though maybe the population is less, but they teach in their own medium where the child is able to comprehend and learn. But here, the learning has to be more experiential based. Understanding by feeling it. Understanding by experiencing it. We go further, and this is a wonderful stage which is coming up. The middle stage, which is going to be 6th, 7th, 8th class. And here basically, for the first time, very, you can say promisingly, the country is talking about vocational training. Now you see, there is a problem of unemployment in India. And even after a child basically is doing his engineering, is not getting job. And when especially we talk about tertiary sector, when we talk about service sector, there's a huge void. But we do not train our teachers, our students in such a way that they should be aiming and emphasizing on taking their interest and taking their hobbies and taking their passion into their occupation, to become their occupation. So here, vocational training, a curriculum for vocational training is coming up in a very big way, which is very commendable. And then we come to the higher stage, where basically we call it the secondary stage, the 4th stage of this national education policy. And this national education policy, which still have so many challenges, talks about inclusiveness, talks about liberal approach, talks about flexibility, talks about learning, stress about learning rather than getting marks. 9th, 10th would be in 4 semesters. 11th, 12th would also be in 4 semesters, but of course 12th would be having an assessment system. There will be a formal assessment system in class 12, no board examination in class 10, which is such a wonderful way that we have to learn, and you will be given credit for all those subject enrichment activities, all those group activities, all those child-centric activities which are expected to be done to make learning more. So here basically, when we talk about more liberal approach, even a person who's good in maths can always go with music. A person who loves biology might also go with geography. A person basically who's a scholar and want to like to be a great entrepreneur as an economist can always go with history. So this choice of taking your own subjects will be there with you, which was not there in India. And people were focused that if you're taking science, then there were very few, you can say, opportunities that you had to think about. But this is going to be making the country open. And the national curriculum framework for school would be matched by the UGC. Now, if you're having so much of stress on vocational training at this level, then definitely what about when they will reach the college? So college is going to be opening all the frontiers and there will be opportunities. So by the year 2040, National Education Policy promises to completely, absolutely revolutionize Indian polity. Now, with your permission, Rajul, can I share a small presentation how it is going to play a very, very vital role in the era of blended learning?
Please, sir.
Is it visible?
Yes, it is visible, sir.
All right. So you see, technology as an enabler is what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the digital divide which we see in the country. And I do not talk about the people who do not have access to technology. But definitely, you know, when the questions would be coming, we will talk about how we can bridge these gaps, you know, especially in the have-not of India. But it is very, very important that we have to all accept that not probably, or probably not, or most likely, but most definitely, by the year 2025, all schools in the country would be using technology very effectively as a facilitator as far as maximizing learning is concerned. You see, we are in the era of blended learning, and blended learning means that when the teacher was supposed to go to the classroom and teach in the classroom, the learning has to extend from there, and those children who are not able to come to the classroom for any reason, for them, the learning experiences and the way the learning happened had to be passed on. So online learning with classroom learning becomes a blended learning, which is going to become the need of the hour. Now, what does NEP recommends? Of course, the curriculum has to be holistic because the aim of education is complete, comprehensive, holistic growth of the child. No rote learning. I think reading, mugging, that has to be totally removed. Problem solving, critical thinking, and people who are coming out with solutions. This is the type of a generation we are looking at. And of course, equipping ourselves with the 21st century skills. Now, India is already ahead because if you see the NASA, if you see the doctors in America or in the part of Europe, we are absolutely dominating. It's not basically the previous methods were not good, but they were not able to touch comprehensively the entire nation. That is why we still see that more than 22% of the population of India are still illiterate. And mind you, illiteracy or literacy means the ability of the child in the country to read or write in a stipulated language which is given in the Constitution. Simply a sentence. Now, if this is a definition and 22% of the people are still illiterate, then 72 years of independence have very little to cheer about. There will be 4 major critical transitions which we will be seeing. Earlier, everything was centered towards the teacher. Teacher was taking the entire onus of teaching. But from teacher, the ownership of learning will go to student. Students' involvement has to become more. Instead of lectures, that is why I thought, if I'm saying this, that I must have a small presentation. So instead of lectures, we have to have more of learning experiences. It is not necessary whether the child is very importantly physically present in the class. His attendance is not important, but from attendance, we would be shifting towards useful, constructive, productive involvement, engagement of the child, which all the teachers, all the educationists, and all the people involved with the educational world should be doing. And of course, these days, when we were trained to give the assessment of learning through a summative way, everybody used to leave everything, and 10th class board used to become a very important part. And class 12 board used to become a nightmare for some. Now, This policy is going to completely change the pattern of assessment from summative to formative, which is very, very welcoming. Well, I will go fast because I see that my time is getting up. But technology as an enabler, and we have to have very strong teaching pedagogies, effective teaching pedagogies, where it should not be child-centric, or rather it should not be teacher-centric, but it should be child-centric. We should be assessing. We should be involving and making the child learn by doing. These type of pedagogies are going to be coming into vogue. Assessment has to be done continuously, comprehensively, but assessment should be meaningful and it should have accuracy. So these things should be there because we have to have the rubrics by which, when we assess even vocational training, when we talk about the enthusiasm, the curiosity, the effort, all these things should come into the report card when we judge the child, that how a new Indian overall average student is shaping up. Well, this of course is a very general slide where it is most important because teacher has featured more than 2,000 times in the National Education Policy draft. It goes on to say, not 2,000, 200 times, but it goes on to be at the pivotal role. Most important part would be done by the teacher, and the teacher has to, in the new world where we are talking about 21st century skill, have to inspire the child. He has to empower that child, because we are not going to treat them as, rather we should empower them and treat them as leaders of today. Should be very passionate about teaching, expert communicator and listener. It's very, very important, and communication does not become oral. Digitally, things are changing. Patient, caring and kind, dedicated to teaching and of course inspiring. It should not be just that we should motivate, we should inspire. I would not like to go into this slide, but I would like to explain a little about multimedia, and that is where I'm going to talk about a little bit of bridging the digital divide. Multimedia means earlier there was only radio. It was covered with visual effects, then music came into being, and multimedia is an amalgamation of text, music, images, and sound. We have to use this more. Use of multimedia has to increase in a very, very big way in the new India which has to emerge, so that, of course, in the cone of experience, the child learns more. Now, one very interesting tool which I'm going to be talking about, which I would request all of you to implement in your school, is the podcasts. Now, podcasts is a wonderful way because the way I speak, the way I move around, you might get distracted by that. But when we are speaking, then people have no choice but to listen. It improves your listening skills. And there are various platforms from where you can download podcasts, but Anchor is one of them, very, very interesting. And once you start doing it, not only with the students, but with the parents also, these podcasts can be very effectively used. They cost nothing, and they are very, very effective as far as maximizing or taking learning to a different level is concerned. Well, there is one more very important thing that as we are talking to each other, it is called virtual reality. Because it's not real, but it is virtual. Then we have augmented reality, where we can bring maybe a planet, what we are teaching, maybe a Saturn, which we are teaching. A Saturn would be just next to us, and we can tell them. So these technologies are available now. And MergeCube and mixed reality, where we are having augmented reality, which is coming up in gamification and giving a lot of thrill to the children, in the process of learning. And what exactly is the base of learning? That learning has to become a pleasurable experience for everybody who's involved with, including the teacher as well as the student. So online learning, online teaching, I would not like to go because I've already exceeded my time limit. But there is a food for thought that which I've already started with. The challenges are very high, and there is a huge technological divide. We are exposing our privacy when it comes to digital technology. There are a lot of cyber crimes which are coming up. But keeping all this in mind, we know that the world is moving very fast. That is why whenever education policy have to be drafted, have to be presented, and have to be implemented, should be time appropriate and need appropriate. And I think technology is going to make the new education policy 2020 a success. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bhanu sir, for explaining these tools and challenges and solutions in such a great detail. Certainly, these are very valuable thoughts, sir, and we'll certainly come back to you with questions and further discussion on your thoughts. Thank you. Now, I would request Uma ma'am. This 21st century, this policy, and there are so many, this pandemic, and there are so many other challenges which are there in education, right? So, in your view, what are the solutions and what is the roadmap for to all the stakeholders? Uma ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Pratap sir talked about how the education system changes in India. But frankly speaking, when we talk about the 78% population is literate, we are facing a lot of problem with the last education policy. Due to no detention policy up to 8th standard, we find a child who is sitting in class 8 is not able to read a book of class 3rd standard. So the new education policy making India global knowledgeable superpower by 2025. That is the aim of the new education policy. So I like the idea very much, because in this curriculum, they have early childhood, they talk about the early childhood care, and school education will be revamped with a no detention policy up to class 8, which is a very good step towards the education system. Assessment will also be done at 3 levels before class 10th board exam. That will be in class 3rd, 5th and 8th. Because we find that so many students suicide in class 10 because they don't have they are not able to face the pressure. They don't know, when you assess a child in class 3rd, so you should come to know that his or her co-classmate are also doing up to the mark. Then he will not feel the pressure in higher classes. So that is a very good step that we are going to assess the child in junior classes also with a basic that was conducted by the appropriate authority. And it will ultimately, I think, not put the pressure on child. In fact, from the beginning, the child is able to do what his or her peer group can do. The basic idea behind this policy is to make a child literate in basic reading, writing, and mathematical calculation. As Bhanu Pratap sir told, literacy means the child should be able to read a sentence, do basic mathematical, so all these points cover in this new economic policy. And not only that, because what happened in the previous education policy, we are producing the graduates, postgraduates. Now we are going to produce the vocational training. Here we talk about the vocational training up to 6th to 8th standard. A child should do one vocation. Koi be any interest, whatever the child's interest, that the child has to develop. Initially, when I was in class 5th, I also appeared for the board exams that time. Then so that was a casual approach, and we used to do SUPW work. So at least each and every child know the basic stitching, basic embroidery, which is all gone through 10+2. We are just making them road learners and all that. So we are leaving behind all the things, all the other vocational subjects. So this policy will cover 6th to 8th. It is compulsory for a child to cover the one vocational subject, and 9th to 12th, they make a child to perfect in one vocational subject. So that is, I think, a very good approach towards this, because now we are the dream of our Prime Minister, Atmanirbhar Bharat. So we are going to achieve this Atmanirbhar Bharat. At present in India, only 5% students receive vocational education. 78% are literate, but only 5% got the vocational education. The target is 100% gross enrollment ratio, as the Bhanu Pratap sir told. GER that also we have to increase. Dropout rates that should be decreased, because that is a major issue in our country. And when we talk about employment, like self-dependent, if a child is self-dependent during lockdown, what I feel, a person who can do stitching or something, still he is able to manage his family rather than a person who depend on others for their jobs, because if because the work is not there, so the jobs are not there. So like at least a person who is having a skill will always able to earn better or have a better living than the those who are the graduates, postgraduates. So this policy is obviously making a better India, better future for the students. I have an interaction between the professors of IIT. According to them, whatever the stuffs they are getting 10 years, 12 years back, they're not getting the same stuff for IITs, because we whatever like cream में से ही cream छाटती है ना आपको, तो like the students का जो level है, that is deteriorating day by day. They have to do a lot of things, not only studies. So like with vocational, they can do whatever they want. They don't have a pressure of marks, grades. So that will be a positive aspect towards a society. But as a school head, I know there's a big challenge. They towards a school, they have to set up all the vocational training centers and all that. And no doubt there will be no gap between the education system between the government and public schools standard. It will be at par. So there will be no taboo like from which school you are. So I think this will also reduce the gap between the students among the different subjects. That's what I feel. And not only that, I feel that NEP has addressed the social and gender gap in the education system. The policy stated that here is an evident gap in the representation of the various social groups. जो social groups का जो variation है, that will also be not there. So what I feel that this new education policy के लिए we have to change the mindset of the people. When we talk about the CC policy, why it was not successful? Because the mindset of the people, those who are implementing that, they were not ready because they thought it's a workload. Otherwise, Springdale schools, they are following this CC pattern from the beginning. They don't have to like follow it when the CBSE asks them. They are following it from the beginning. They always use CC pattern. They cover the syllabus. Then if the class performance is not good, then they again repeat it. So like this CC pattern is not followed by the teachers or whatever who are like end corner, who is going to provide the students. So like we as educators, we have to make sure that whatever we want to provide, that should be up to the mark, up to the grade. So then only we will have a benefit of it. So that's my view. Like there is a challenges. There is a challenge in the new education policy, but we all have to unite together and we have to work in a manner so nobody will suffer from this new education policy. We will implement it. So whatever the criteria is put on, like to make everybody self-dependent. That is the main. I think so. With the new basic education, everyone should be self-dependent to do their work. So that's, I think, the main thing. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Uma ma'am. You have raised very valid points. And, I would say a wonderful hope with NEP that it has potential to reduce gap among different schools, kids, the vocational training. Certainly, we'll have a further discussion, and we have received many questions related to these points. So we'll come back to you with questions. So thank you, ma'am. Now I would request Dr. Samuel Raj. Raj sir, you talked about the synergy, and this is again very important. And I generally quote one example. One big corporate shared one thing with me a few years back. He said that when as a consumer we buy any product. So we always buy 100% accurate product. We don't buy a mobile phone with 99.9% accuracy. We buy a mobile phone with 100% accuracy. We don't buy a car with 99.9% accuracy. We buy a car with 100% accuracy. So that corporate said that one of the biggest challenge with the industry is we don't get 100% accurate manpower. Which the skills they had supposed to, they were supposed to get during their colleges or during their education. they did not get those skills. So there are many challenges, right? So one about the synergy, how we can create more, that kind of, I would say, collaboration between school education and higher education. Raj sir, your thoughts.
Now just 10 minutes நான் join பண்றேன். நான் இன்னொரு மீட்டிங்ல இருக்கிறேன். நான் 10 minutes. Okay. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm sorry, I have to leave by 4 o'clock for another meeting. Okay, I have committed up to only 4 o'clock, but I will just take 7-8 minutes to give my thoughts. What is very, as you pointed out, what is very important in terms of synergy. And you have rightly said that, the industry side experience. In fact, I was in a corporate sector for 10 years. I was working as in the R&D and heading a drug discovery project in the field of microbiology. I worked with 2 major pharma giants. They are Ranbaxy Research Laboratories as well as Daiichi Sankyo India. And you rightly said that what is needed at the industry level, at the corporates. The universities are not able to produce. And when the students, they reach the corporate sector, they're totally naive. They're totally new. They do not know what to do and what not to do. Why this gap is there? This is what I point at, there is a need for synergy. Once there is a synergy, we get, support from the corporates, and the corporates get support from the university. So in fact, I would say that the universities should not be separate and the schools should not be separate. There is a need within the system, within the academic system only, there is a need for synergy. Okay, let me just give a little bit introduction, before I talk about the synergy. I lived in Japan for 3 years. I was doing my postdoctorate in Japan, and then I became a faculty at University of Pennsylvania, USA. But I love to see the school children, because my son was born in Japan when I was there, as a postdoc. So, that's one reason that, we used to watch at the school students. When we look at the school students, they used to be very happy. They love to wait for the school bus or the school vehicle. And I was, wondering why the school children are so happy to go to the school. Whereas in India, as soon as they see the school bus, many children, I have seen them, crying. They don't want to go to the school. They run back to the home. Okay, why such a contrast? The children, they love to go to the school, and in India they love not to go to the school. And one reason I could see that the elementary school or the preparatory school, or what we call it as in Anganwadi, that sort of settings, it's completely different. They just play, they enjoy. They give time for some eating some snacks, and then some time for the rest, and then they teach completely different way. And one important thing is that when we see here, this the foundation stage, which is 5 years, which is very good, but how we are going to implement that is going to be very important. Otherwise, what is happening in our system is that we give so many notebooks, so many books, and the school bag itself is so heavy, and which makes the children frightened. And one more important thing that we need to understand, of course, in Japan it is very common that the children, they have this autism, autistic problems are there. Nowadays in India also it is coming up. We are not able to understand who is good and who is having mild autism. Can we differentiate? And some of the children, those who have mild autism, they are excellent, they are brilliant, but we ignore them. The simple reason is that they are not able to write. They are not able to speak properly, but their knowledge is excellent. That we ignore, and then we put them as a mark that they are not good for this purpose. So that's what we need to be very careful. But in the new education policy, this will be an excellent opportunity, especially at the foundation course, if we observe and assess the students and then give them the knowledge accordingly, that's going to be excellent. And especially with the Indian system, we paid so much of attention to the knowledge, wisdom, and the truth. These are like 3 pillars of the education in those days. When we talk about the ancient education, these are the main things. And another important point with the the ancient system was not just only acquisition of the knowledge, but preparation for the life, how we are going to face the life, which is going to be very important. So that is where the new education policy has really paid much attention. That's what very few salient points. Just I want to share it with you. What is given in the new education policy is the synergy in curriculum, which is more important. We don't need to read so many things. We don't need to write so many things. We don't need to memorize so many things. Our Banu sir as well as Uma madam, they said very clearly, people, there is no need for, memorizing so many things. There is no need for so many books and so many things. Okay, we need to see that one, how we can, very smart way. That is going to be very important. We need to be very smart. What is needed and how we can create this synergy, how it will be useful in future. So that is going to be more important. So synergy in curriculum, that's going to be very important. And respect for the diversity. This is also very important because India is not just a country. It is like a continent. So we need to respect each other. So we need to respect the local context. That's the reason. One good thing is that with the local language, yes, language is very important because, many people, they think in their own language. If they want to express, first they think about, certain things in their own language. English is not our mother tongue, but we can very fluently convey certain, information very clearly. Banu sir said very clearly, where their mother tongue is spoken and then how they are taking it forward. And another important thing is that, extensive use of the technology in the new education policy. And the most important thing is the skill development. And the skill development will be very important for that, synergy study. Synergy is going to be very important. Now, let me talk about a little bit about the higher education, because where we can have the synergy. And, one point we have heard that, after the engineering, the jobs are very less, or many people are not getting the job, which is true. Okay, what is happening is that because we are not prepared, there is no synergy between the industry and the universities. That is a problem. But what we do at SRM is completely different. We bring the industry to the university. Okay, you guys, please come over here. You teach us, and you talk to our students, and let us have the curriculum in such a way that what we teach, which is very important at the industry level. This is what we have, that we follow the system called as a choice-based credit system. Choice-based credit system is emphasized in the new education policy at the university level. At the higher education level, it is emphasized, which we are already following it. So we have the industry-related courses. We have the industry people coming and teaching here. And we have the industry training. The last semester is meant for the industry training. So this is what we do that one. In that way, what happens that industry support us and we support the industry. That is how we bring the synergy. Now the same synergy, what I'm talking about, the same synergy should come with the school system, schools and the education, the schools and the colleges, the schools and the higher education. They should merge. They should discuss. The principals and the college principals, as well as the deans of the universities and the vice chancellors of the universities, we need to meet, and then we need to discuss what is done at the school level, how we can take it forward. Because school, you are preparing for the higher education. In the higher education, what we are doing is that we are preparing for them for their jobs in the industry. So how they can get the job. So this is what we need to do that. This is what I meant, the synergy. And that's where we need to motivate the students. And we need to, give the energy, and we need to, build the, capability of the faculty, which is very important. For that, what we do in our university is that we used to arrange the faculty development program, because that is going to be very important. Unless until we develop the, faculty, unless until we train the faculty, unless until we prepare them for the next stage, it's very, difficult. So we need to set up a goal. That is going to be very important. That is how, what happens that at SRM, we don't see any student is looking for the job, because by the 7th semester, the engineering students, I'm talking about the engineering students mainly, because the question has come about the engineering. In the 7th semester only, they have jobs in their hand. How it is possible? Because we bring the industry into the system. That is going to be very important. So what I would suggest my, school principal colleagues, that you should be in touch with like-minded universities, so that your students, they find the best place, they find their future, and their future is secured. They get the job. So what happens that the school as well as the university gets a name, because the alumni, The students, they speak for the university. The students, they speak for the school. And what we see at, in US also, I've seen that similar, schooling pattern. And there the universities are, most of the universities, you talk about Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Pennsylvania, and Stanford, all these universities are private university. They are the top universities. So that is how we are aiming to be like that, one of the top universities among the world. Not necessarily in India, what is happening, the governments are, sponsored universities like JNU, DU, they are at the top, or IITs, or IIMs. Why not, the universities like, SRM? This is what we are aiming to be that. The schools also should be coming into that level. That's where we need to work together, join together, let us meet and discuss. We will create a platform, and SRM will be very, very happy to arrange a meeting and discuss, and various topics we can work on that one. And once again, I thank you so much for arranging such a meeting, and thank you so much. And please excuse me, I have to leave for another meeting now. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Raj. Certainly, these points are very important. That more and more interaction between school, education, school leaders, and higher education representatives is needed. And an employment problem can only be tackled with more, industry interaction and exposure with industry requirements. So, thank you, Dr. Raj, for joining, for your time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So now I would request Sachinji. Sachinji, you have worked with corporates, you have worked with big government institutions like SBI, and then you have spent your last almost a decade in education, right? So when you entered into education, I'm sure you saw that the challenges from that corporate perspective, what is required and what is happening in that. So I would request if you can share a few of those things, and then you can share your thoughts on this NEP. Sachinji.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak about my experiences. And starting with the school, well, why I have chosen to start a school. Being an entrepreneur, I just started a school, starting from my career after doing my engineering in 7th semester. Like Dean sir has told us, I got a placement into Infosys. So Infosys, they were taking a separate exam and totally different things, whatever they wish to ask to judge the person for the job. Okay, that I never being taught in any of the school or any in the colleges. After that, just joining Infosys for 2 years, I cracked that State Bank probationary exam that was having 5 levels of exams. That was a government exam, and all the 5 levels are having totally different, they were asking for totally different knowledge. Just like logical reasoning and the computer-based knowledge, the general awareness is after that GD and interview. So those things were never being taught in any of the schools or any in the education system. I was working in India. I was doing in India. So I was just wondering that this is also a government exam and this was a private exam, and all the policies are being made by the government for the schools also. So why they are not taught and teaching us at that level? If it is required to be for the job, the foremost priority for any of the education system is the job. Everyone want to achieve a job. And for getting that job, you have to be logical. You have to have the knowledge of all those logical reasonings and data interpretations for CAT and everything. But this is not being taught in the schools. So I just thought this is the base what I have to give to the school students from the beginning. That was my vision for which I started the schools. And then what I found that at our time, what we learned by that way, there was one teacher and all the students are studying over there. It is just like a presentation teacher is making and all are listening, whether they are getting it or not. So that point of time, I got to know about this experiential learning, and that we have to teach all the students through the doing. That is the most important thing what I feel. So I just make that as a base while starting my school, that I have to taught all the students by doing, by learning. For that, experiential learning is to be done. And for that, first foremost, there are a lot of companies also available in India which are working for these things. They are providing the curriculum. They are having fixed routine and everything, just like Exceed and EDEC and all other different companies. A lot of, I think almost all the publishers are coming up with these ideas. So what I found, they are making all the teachers simply a robot. They are fixing the curriculum. They want this thing to be taught in first period, this thing to be played in the second period, third day, fourth day, fifth day. But we are human beings. All the teachers can't do like that. And we cannot restrict our teachers, our main, who are doing this so much noble working. Teaching is the best job. I just find out they are doing the noble cause. They are not earning for their family. They are just working to uplift this whole system. So we cannot restrict all the teachers by that way, that you have to come to this class and you have to teach like this. Second day this thing, third day like this. Experiential learning like that. So what we made a special teacher's timetable diary, in which first day was just kept for that thing, that you have to give some experiential learning. You have to bring something to the class to explain what you are going to teach. At our education time, there was nothing like a video showing and all the things. A lot of history I missed just because of this reading, writing skills. But when we just saw Discovery Channel, we got to know history better than the school times. So I have implemented all the videos also at that time, and the experiential, how their teachers have to teach in their classes. This first day, they are independent. They are free to do their working, but they have to teach the students by some games or some experiential just like bringing a balloon to the class and showing that it is occupying the space by having air inside it. It's a basic thing. But by this way, the critical thinking and the thought process of the student strikes. They start thinking about a lot of things what we have to do. But after that, what I feel, teachers are rigid. Teachers are not so open to the challenges. So I just got my experience from the State Bank when I joined it as a probationary officer in the age of 22, that all my juniors, so-called juniors, are going to be retired. All are of 55 plus age. And when I'm talking to them, just, sir, please use this computer and these other technology we have to do. It was about 15 years back, 18 years back. So all the the staff of this bank was very rigid. So I got to know from that part that right now the same logic coming to this school industry also. So all the teachers who are the core people, without whom we cannot implement any policy, whether it's the current one or what I'm trying to do for the last 4 years. So I'm very happy that government is coming up with this type of policy, which I'm trying to implement for the last 4 years. So which will bring the change of the thought for the teachers, that now we have to do. We have a necessity, and government have made some policies like this. So we are not left with any other option also. So it is a definitely what I'm trying to do for the last 4 years. It is bringing me on the same pace. It will increase the pace of my learning. So I just request all the teachers and every education person over here and in the nation level that we have to be ready with the changes. We have to accept all the changes, and for these all things are for the betterment. So that is from my side only, and we are trying our best to implement.
Thank you. Thank you, Sachinji. You know, one corporate leader told me a few years back that technology, never, replace companies or organizations.
Yeah.
These are the organizations which use technology. They will replace those organizations or individuals who would not use technology or who would not adapt with time. So thank you, Sachinji, for your thoughts and sharing your experiences. Right now, I would request Luke, if you can share your talk and how this vocational, the emphasis upon vocational education and the art education would get evolved with the implementation of policy. Luke.
Sure. Thank you so much. It was very good to hear everybody's point of view over here. I think I'm the last speaker, I think, of the day. So I'm going to keep it short as possible. From our point of view, my name is Luke, and I basically represent the the vocation side of the new policy, which is the creative arts. I work in Furtado School of Music, and Furtado School of Music basically is more, it's one of the leading music institutes in the country, basically, when it comes to music curriculum. So in our point of view, what we actually do is, we basically give our curriculum to schools, and we try to get in touch with them and then try to understand what is happening with the curriculum. We are happy with the new policy, with the new education policy, because it puts a lot of focus on vocation and the creative arts. And it's important for us to know, it's important because, for people, because there are a sizable chunk of people in the country who actually opt for the vocational arts and for curriculum for creative arts. So a move like this by the government is very encouraging for all those people who are not in mainstream. And by mainstream, I mean who are not selecting IT or not selecting medicine. This is more towards the creative arts. So for those students, this is a very encouraging move, because how else, there is no other valid reason why a student will not feel confident, when they know that, even the education department themselves are ensuring that, there is stress given to the field that they want to choose. For example, I am a musician. I have learned a little bit of theory. I have learned a little bit of performance. I have learned a few things in terms of, whatever has to go in terms of building a music reputation, so that I need to carve a successful career ahead. But I had to start that late. You basically ask any musician or any performer, any creative arts, they will answer in the same way that, I had to start only after the 10th standard, after the 11th standard, after the 12th standard. It was not integrated in school itself in a way that could be taken in a more serious way. So, which is why what we do is, what Furtado School of Music does is, we have a lot of people, we have a lot of musicians who have done a little bit of research. And, what we do is, we start talking to the schools, and we try to take feedback from all of y'all, asking y'all, sir, ma'am, we have given you this program. Is it beneficial to the student? How are the students? What are they doing? How are they reacting when they are learning from this music curriculum? They may have just one music class in the day, or one language, or one poetry class, or one, any creative class in the day. So our idea is to understand, is it really helping them? Okay, and do you find students who are more angled, who are more inclined towards these arts? And then our next question is, okay, you have found these students. What are you going to do with them? How are you going to encourage, and how are you going to push these students so that they don't have a late start with the policy, with whatever they have? Okay, for example, in music, if they want to choose it. So I'm just going to show you one small presentation right now. It is mostly about how we are in terms of the getting a proper music curriculum on board. Moment, here it comes. Yes. So, like I had mentioned, this is we are basically Furtado School of Music, and we have been around for quite some time, catering to quite a lot of schools, quite a lot of students, right from an urban school which is an IB centric curriculum, to the complete rural backgrounds of school in Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, where English is not even heard of over there. You'll find only regional language over there. So we have tried to basically ensure that the curriculum reaches all of them. Okay, because we know that a student, in order to arouse interest in a student, music works much better than literature for a student to get that interest aroused. So, which is why we have tried to tailor make our curriculum according to the geographical region. There are just a few brands that we are working with. A couple of inter-school competitions. Bandit 2019, this festival is actually the biggest platform that a school student can get when it comes to performances across the country. So we have quite a lot of students, quite a lot of schools come in and try and get their registrations across. And it's a wonderful platform for anyone who wants to make themselves known to a larger public. Okay, what happens here is we have noticed that along with a simple class, it's also beneficial to have a prominent personality or somebody who is experienced in that particular subject to come and just give a workshop to students. And we do that. So for example, if you just opt for a curriculum, you opt for a FSM curriculum that we have, we will ensure that there are personalities who will come and who will speak to the students, who will give them experiences, who will talk to them, he will answer them questions. And students who are interested in it will really and students are interested in it, they will raise questions, they will think about it, and they will not ask the questions right away, they will ask the questions soon, it will play on their minds. So which is why we have understood that it's good to get people who have experienced this to come and speak to the students from, like I said, from any background. It does not matter if the student is sitting in a posh school in Bombay or if he's in a rural school in Karnataka or Andhra Pradesh. It is the same. Okay, they are all treated the same. Of course, because of online, the education online, because of this year, how things went, we had to move online, just like how everybody else has moved online. And thankfully, that has helped us also, because, as Sachin sir was saying earlier, he learned a lot. There was quite a lot that he learned even from Discovery Channel, etc., which he used, which he basically implemented. So the thing is that when a student is learning a piece of music, if a student is learning a piece of music and if he's really interested in that piece of music, it gives a parent, it gives a teacher or a principal so much joy when that student has gone to YouTube, and instead of browsing through cartoons and this and that student has actually gone to YouTube and they are trying to figure out what song, what are these notes, what are these lyrics, am I playing the notes correctly? So that really makes a lot of sense, that makes a lot of difference, which is why we are really pushing to ensure that we get this curriculum across. I'll just tell you a little bit of the curriculum. The curriculum, there are a lot of pedagogists that are at work when we are creating this curriculum, be it for a keyboard, be it for vocals, Hindustani vocals, Western vocals, whatever it is. We have won quite a few awards also for this, because we have seen that it's very rare for anyone to come up with any solutions to a child who comes and says, I know how to play this instrument, or I know how to sing this song well, please guarantee me a good career path. Okay, we do not know a lot of experts who can actually say that. And because it is just not enough to learn a skill, it's not enough to just learn a practical skill unless we tell the student, we teach the student or show the student what to do with that skill ahead 10 years down the line. And which is why we have all these things in place, so that we're able to tell the student, okay, you have done this, you have finished a grade 8 Trinity, you have invested 10,000 hours of practice into getting this level. So this is what you need to do. So what we do is, for example, according to this slide over here, which I've just showed you, we set up the entire program for you. We have a full lab set up for you. We'll set up your room with the keyboards or the guitars, whichever instrument the students choose. The fees covers the entire cost of the instrument, the books, the teaching, as well as we send in our own teachers to conduct these lessons. And at the end of the year, then these students get their own platform to basically go and perform and what they have been learning. So why we are really encouraged by this whole new education policy is because it has finally given people who have been struggling in the world of the creative arts a boost to say, yes, I have taken the right choice because I want to go into the creative arts. And earlier, schools had a lot of rote going on. So if I had to learn a song when I was young, if I had to learn a song, it was completely by rote and it was completely mechanical. There was no analysis that had to happen where I had to actually sit and analyze the song. There were no concepts that were taught to me in the sense that, okay, I have to analyze the song and then think of concepts, think of creativity, try and compose a piece of music as, even if it's the most basic, also not a problem. So those opportunities were not given to students, earlier. But that is going to change now because of this new education policy, and we are very hopeful and we are very positive that we are going to help arouse a student's interest not only in music but also in creativity, in composition, and in basically thinking for themselves. Because we want to do away with the whole rote and with a mechanical way of living, of studying. We want them to start using their imagination and just get better. So that's why we basically, this is what we would like to say about the education policy and why we want and we are happy about this. That is all I would like to say about this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Luke. Certainly, this policy is certainly opening new gates and new ways, and it will certainly give a different direction once it is implemented successfully. Thank you for your thoughts. Now, time for the questions. Before I formally, open the house and start presenting these questions which we have already received, I would take a minute to explain what exactly we do in school Lalaji Solutions. So here I'll share my screen. School Lalaji Solutions is India's largest one-stop solution platform for educational institutions. We are currently present in 42 cities, working with somewhere around 4,500 institutions across country. We help institutions in three ways. We help them in buying right thing from right people at right price. We negotiate on behalf of schools and we ensure that institutions get a good discount. We also help institutions in selling their old item, like their old buses, generator, furniture. There are many institutions in villages or in different parts of country, which may require your old items. We also help institutions in raising money, that may be in terms of loan or in terms of fee financing or in some other modes. Why any institution needs a platform like School Lalaji Solution? Generally, you have your own team, you have your own set of suppliers. Your team is expert. Your team believe that you're already getting good discount. These are all are valid reasons. Certainly, you have good suppliers. You are already receiving a good discount. But when a company reaches out to you, it has already added a good amount of cost in that particular process. So when something comes through School Lalaji kind of platform, so we save that money, which was actually got spent during that reach out process. Number one. Number two, there are many companies. There are thousands of unique products and services, which are coming up every year. But they are not able to reach out to you. They are not able to meet Bhanu sir. They are not able to meet a present or give a demonstration to Bhanu sir or Uma ma'am or Sachin ji, right? So here we come in. We understand your requirement. We understand Bhanu sir's taste. We understand Bhanu sir's requirement. We also understand, your individual requirements, and accordingly we filter companies and we connect those companies to you. There are many innovative products and services coming up, but the marketing is a big challenge for all the companies. We work in all these categories: smart class solutions, uniform, insurance, diesel, solar plant, language labs, security solutions, furniture, recruitment, music, classroom, healthcare, robotics, STEM, STEAM labs, career counseling, stationery, digital marketing, IT solutions, educational tour, generators, learning tools, and finance. We take the guarantee that will at least save your 5 to 7%, in all categories. I don't know like how much Sachinji spent on their bus insurance last year, but without even looking at your insurance bill, we can take the guarantee that will at least save us some amount, right? So this is 5% in general. One example, last year alone, in one category, bus insurance, we saved 2 crore 40 lakh rupees for different institutions. These are some major highlights. 8 megawatt plus solar installation, 3,000 bus insurance, 400 plus smart classrooms, 2,000 plus cameras, 350 plus 20 programs, 56 old buses, uniform in 42 schools. By the end of 2021, we aim to reach out to 10,000 institutions. We need your support, guidance, and blessings. So thank you. Now time for the questions. And in fact, one very innovative services, Bhanu sir, you'll be happy to know that, we launched during the lockdown. We provided a logistic support, for 92 schools for their books delivery. So we delivered books to students at their doorstep, for 92 schools across primarily North India, right? So right, so thank you again all for sharing your thoughts and perspective and giving a direction to this series with your valuable thoughts. Now we have received many questions, so I would request Bhanu sir if we can start with you.
Sure.
So this question has been asked by Ms. Savita Arora ji. She's the principal with Bharati Public School, Delhi. Savita ji has asked, we all know that this policy throws many challenges, though it promises. It offers good promises, but it throws good challenges like the requirement for adaptation with technology. How we are going to face those challenges for successful implementation? What are your suggestions?
Well, support from every corner is very necessarily required. Most important is the support from the government. So at this stage, the National Curriculum Framework is designing the learning outcomes, the books, the curriculum. Of course, they are buying the time, and this is the time when everything is happening. Secondly, there should be more of cooperation, more of sharing between those institutes which have the means and the one which are not having the means. That is why these days, every school mandatorily are supposed to go through the training of experiential learning. Now, learning outcome through experiential learning can be created. It does not require much of investment. It requires more of thinking and understanding. So the best practices which are going on in so many great schools can be easily shared with those schools which are lacking the infrastructure or maybe the sort of exposure. So the only answer is that everybody will have to come, join hands together, help. And one thing great about sharing is that when you share your knowledge, you do not lose, you rather gain, and the other person you are sharing with also gains. So it becomes a win-win situation.
Right. Thank you. Pansar. Now I would request Uma ma'am if we can, present this question to you. This has been asked by Miss Jhilik Das. She is a PRT teacher with Montfort Academy, Dhanbad. Jhilik Das has asked, how do you visualize India after 10 years with the implementation of this policy? Umaji, do you think what would be the main changes in the school structure after 10 years?
Basically, what I feel, there will be a great change in school infrastructure as well as in the teachers. I tell you my experience when initially I started my career with Navyu schools. Each teacher have to take one activity. If you don't know the activity, they will teach you. They will take 2 or 3 days to teach you that activity, and then you have to teach that to the student. So that time, block printing was taught to me. So I think the students were more active, more independent, and they are more keen. At present, if as I think one of my follower told, like after doing the engineering, he is not able to do whatever the question Infosys were asking. They were totally different. So I think this gap will be reduced in the after 10 years. I think so. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, ma'am. Now I would request Sachinji if he can take on this question. This has been asked by Miss Lata Menon. Lata ji is a teacher with the Teresa Public School, Cochin. Lataji has asked, how to bring out leadership quality in students. And leadership quality is a very subjective term. So you have to define the leadership quality according to you, and then you have to suggest ways.
First of all the leaders never think that they are the leaders. Okay, which brings some positiveness in them. So